Hello, this lesson will be dealing with the phrase-state properties of one of the most important types of concrete with high capacities that are studied in Module 5. The concrete that will be studied in this lesson is the merger of two types of concrete with improved characteristics. First of all, self-compacting concrete, also known as SCC. This type of concrete shows its main property when it's poured. It behaves like a liquid and not as a semi-solid. This property provides high benefits, including the enhancement of productivity and reduction of the overall cost of the structure. In addition, its fluid state enables the possibility of reaching congested reinforcement areas, having an excellent mechanical response with great durability and uniformity of the material obtained. Nevertheless, it is frequent to use high binder contents and admixture in order to obtain the required fresh properties, which, consequently, causes an increment in cost and increases the risk of cracking due to initial shrinkage. One way to overcome that problem is adding fibers to SCC concrete. The presence of fibers is not only suitable to avoid shrinkage cracking, but also it might enhance the most limited mechanical properties of concrete, its tensile and flexural behavior. By merging these two technologies, self-compacting concrete and fiber-reinforced concrete, great synergies can be obtained. While the fibers prevent shrinkage cracking and enhance the mechanical properties of SCC, the flux of SCC, while in fresh state, might help to align the fibers in the direction that can, if the pouring has been thoroughly studied, maximize the properties that the fibers provide to the concrete. Therefore, in this lesson, the first objective will be to show if it's possible to manufacture an SCC at a competitive cost. This process involves reducing the amount of cement used and the proportion of superplasticizer. In this SCC at a competitive cost is obtained, the next step will be trying to maintain its astounding fresh state properties when adding certain amount of fibers. The amount of fibers will range from low amounts that in theory will not be able to be taken into account in the structural design to high amounts that will meet the requirements stated in the most used recommendations for structural design. As it is well known, the addition of fibers reduces the self-compactability of the concrete, and in this regard, the influence of the amount of fibers added will be studied by relating the fresh state properties of the concrete's manufacture with the dosage of fibers. By comparing this variation of the fresh state properties, the influence of the fibers will be determined. The design of SCC starts by choosing the materials that will be involved in manufacturing. In this particular concrete, the process has been divided into different parts. The first one is the design of the granular skeleton. The criterion that has been followed is obtaining the maximum capacity and therefore the minimum volume of voids with the three fractions of crushed aggregates chosen. Using 24% of gravel, 16% of grit, and 60% of sand, the maximum capacity of the granular skeleton can be obtained. It is important to highlight that the maximum size of the aggregate should be less than 20 mm as a general rule. In this case, the maximum size was 12.7 mm. Once the proportion of aggregates has been obtained, the cement paste design starts. In this case, a self-compacting concrete, the amount of fine particles should be high in order to obtain the desired fresh properties. This could be done by adding cement, which might increase the cost, or by substituting some proportion of cement by limestone powder. In order to achieve the desired self-compactability, certain proportion of superplasticizer has to be employed. The fibers used in this case are polyolefin fibers. These fibers are the results of the evolution of the products developed by the plastic industry. The mechanical properties of these fibers improve the typical ones of the traditional plastic fibers. It is important to highlight that the modulus of elasticity and the tensile strength are noticeably higher than in the traditional plastic materials, reaching a modulus of elasticity above 9 gigapascals and a tensile strength higher than 500 megapascals. In addition, as can be seen in the pictures of the slide, the surface of the fibers is designed especially to increase the bond between the cement paste and the fibers. This has been achieved by using an embossed surface and a hydrophobic chemical treatment. With such concrete and fibers, a self-compacting concrete, which will be the base of the ones with fibers, has been designed. As can be seen in the table that appears in the slide, the amount of cement and the proportion of superplasticizer employed are limited, obtaining an SCC at a reduced cost. Several amounts of polyolefin fibers will be added to such SCC. The quantities used range from 3 kg to 10 kg meter cube, and will be termed as SCC, PFR, and SCC3, SCC 4.5, SCC 6, and SCC 10 respectively. The first properties will be addressed using two tests. The first of them is the SLAM test that corresponds to the European standard test EN 12350-8. In this test, self-compactability is characterized by two measurements. First of all, the time that takes to reach 500 mm diameter, and the second value is the final diameter of the patty. Of course, it is important to point out that the patties should have an homogeneous distribution of aggregates and fibers if these fibers were used. And the shape also of the patty should be as close as possible to a circle. The second test is the V-cone test. This test measures the ability of the concrete to pass through narrow sections of the mold. The test compares the time that takes to the concrete to empty the metal cone that can be seen in the right part of the slide. In the table of this slide, it can be seen that all the parameters measured by the two test methods are within the limits established in the recommendations. This recommendation establishes that the diameter should be higher than 550 mm and in the case of the V-cone, the time should be less than 25 seconds. It has to be highlighted that even in the case of PFR SCC10, the measurements taken are far from the limits that the recommendations require. In addition, in the picture shown, it can be clearly perceived that the distribution of aggregates is homogeneous within the patty, and also that the borders of the patty show no signs of segregation whatsoever. In order to assess the influence of the presence of fibers in the self-compactability of the concrete, the following figures have been made. In the first figure, it can be seen that the presence of fibers decreases the diameters of the patty as the amount of fibers increase. In contrast, it seems that the greatest changes have taken place between 3 and 4.5 kg meter cube, and not for the greatest amounts of fibers. In the case of the V-cone test, a similar effect can be seen. The presence of fibers increases the time that takes the V-cone to be emptied. In any case, self-compactability has been kept in spite of all the amount of fibers added. Thank you for your attention.